For women that don't wake up hungry, some people can say, well, I don't want to force myself to eat. Aren't I then going against my natural instincts if I'm trying to force myself to eat? So then people maybe overcomplicate it and get worried then hearing this. So what would your advice be there? Would it literally be, as you said, protein fortified coffee, which I'm guessing is adding protein into your coffee and sipping that in the morning as kind of starting the day?
Yeah, but you also want to add, like I add oat or almond milk for a little bit of carb as well. So it's not a lot. It's 15 grams of protein, which is equivalent of 1.5 tablespoons of protein powder. It could be third cup of Greek yogurt. That's about 15 grams. So it's not a lot. And part of it also is women have learned not to cue in to their hunger. So when you're talking about a lot of women who have been fasting or looking to delay hunger, they've gotten into the habit of just ignoring and not understanding what hungry means until they get into the later stages of the day. I know that I'm not really hungry until about 10 or 11, which is way too late for my body to work optimally. But that's because I've learned that situation through all of my years of training and, you know, cross time zones and that kind of stuff. So I make a point to eat, even though I don't necessarily feel hunger cues.
So what do you say, which I think is really important, on the research around the intermittent fasting, like Dr. Sachi Panda, who will have brought out all of his research, or Mindy Peltz, who will talk about fast for 72 hours when you're not on your period, and those 2 weeks before, make sure that you aren't fasting because that works with your hormone system. There's so many different types of information that, one, we have kind of spoken about on this show and brought people on for their opinions. What's your reaction to those kind of two ones that I actually just brought up?
When I've done a podcast with Mindy Pelez and talking about fasting, and we have two different mindsets there. It's like I work in the active population. As soon as you start exercising, it's a fasted state. But regardless of what it is, even with looking at fasting as a whole, for women doing time restricted eating, with the caveat that time restricted means that you eat within a half an hour of waking up, you have dinner and nothing after dinner. So you have a good 12 to 14-hour fast. Like I say, it's just normal eating. But if you're getting into the weeds of research, like what a lot of the research that's open on the screen is talking about, like if you have a 12 to 14-hour fast, then you're going to garner a lot of the benefits of autophagy. You're going to have changes in your proteins to improve cellular debris uptake, and you're going to have the upregulation of skeletal muscle repair and all the things that you think about with fasting. But when it gets into the delayed food intake in the morning and your fasting window or your eating window is from 12 to like 7, there also has to be the caveat that the food that's in that eating window has to be nutritionally dense. And that isn't a conversation that's been had either. So there's lots of nuances around it. When I say fasting is overstated and one of the worst things for women, is because from where I'm coming from as an exercise physiologist, people are layering everything on. And when I get into the bottom of it and say, why exactly are you doing this? They want to, one, lose weight, or they want to be lighter, or they don't feel hungry. And it's all of these more sociocultural cues around it rather than looking at the basic physiology. And when I point out, look, if you're looking at fasting to garner all of these benefits, then you can't exercise. But if you are exercising, then you are getting a bigger stress on the body that's going to instigate better autophagy and better responses with blood sugar control, metabolic control, cardiovascular outcomes than if you were to do fasting. So you really want to pick one or the other. When you bring them together, they don't benefit each other, especially if you're doing exercise fasted. Works for men. Believe me, it works for men because men are not metabolically flexible. There are a lot of things within their mitochondria that needs help. And so fasted training works for men, but for women, it's a significant detriment to our parasympathetic activity, to our ability to maintain and build lean mass, our ability to improve our blood lipids, to improve VEGF for our endothelial function, our blood pressure, to improve our blood glucose responses. And this one study that I have open right now is talking about over the course of 12 weeks, where we had men who were doing intermittent fasting and women who were doing intermittent fasting. The men had better blood glucose responses and better insulin sensitivity at the end, but women were pre diabetic. So there's lots of nuances in the literature that aren't spoken outwardly because everyone is so nuanced into just defaulting to what the primary male data says, and they don't question it. But when you come from my lens and been working with women for women for so long, I'm always digging in and going, wait a second, let's see what happens for the women. And then when you really start to dig into all of the popular fads, you see that it's really not appropriate for women.